welcome to the 2026 Loveland, Colorado GTOAA National Convention. My name is Alana Dow. I'm here with Harold Krantz. I am the original owners coordinator for the GTOAA. Now, the original owners is owners that have bought their vehicle, purchased it new from the dealership, and owned it continuously throughout the several decades up until now, and have maintained continuous ownership. Harold Krantz happens to be one of those owners of a 1965 GTO. So we're here to hear Harold's story. We want to know a little bit about what led you to buy the GTO. Did you buy it off the showroom floor, or was there one specific thing you had to have on it? Talk to me about what led to your love.
The first, there was one person at church had a 64 GTO, and that kind of caught my attention. But two of my friends bought 65 GTOs, and they were going to race them on a quarter-mile strip. I saw those two cars. We hung around together, and I said, I've got to have one of those too. So I made three 65 GTOs that we all hung around together. One of them was Van Seymour, and there's a big story behind his car. He still, he doesn't have, he has passed away, but his son still has that car. And there's a story with that one that's quite interesting. Charlie Johnson was the other one. He went into the Army and he sold his car to a teenager. It lasted 2 weeks, and he wrapped it around a tree, and that was the end of that car. So of the three that are out there, I've got one, and Van Seymour's son has the other one. So he's never had it restored. It's still sitting in his garage. Someday somebody ought to take a real good look at that car, because there's a good story behind it. My car, I street raced it, needless to say, drag raced it, and parked it for a number of years. And in 2000, I had it restored to its present condition now. So, but it's part of the family. I think my wife enjoyed that car as much as I did, and I don't know if the kids did or not, but they seemed to enjoy it. So it was a good ride, and I'm glad I kept it. It's been a kind of a hallmark in our family, really. So
now, Harold, you said that your buddy's car has a story, and I think every car has a story. I'd like to know the story of yours, how the origins, how you got it.
I went to a dealership in Flint. It was a Cadillac Pontiac dealership, and I ordered it. I wanted certain things on the car, and one thing that kind of messed it up is I ordered it in December, and I wanted a positive traction rear end in it, and that plant that made those was on strike. So I either had to take an open rear end or wait another. I waited till February, and they said that they still weren't able to put it in the car. So I took the car without the posi, and I added that later. But that was the only thing that hung the car up. But there were certain things that I wanted it built the way I wanted. I didn't want a console. I didn't want a number of things on there that, I was going to add some wheels later. The rally ones I didn't get. I should have. Bought the rally ones, because they kind of caught on after the car. Years later, they were the things to do. But we were looking at aluminum mags at that time and stuff. So I just bought the regular wheels and put stuff on later. Then it went into the second car. When we brought that car home from the dealership, David was 3.5 years old. He's sitting in the front seat, the same bucket that's in there now. And David was about that tall, and he's probably 6'10" now, so he grew a little bit.
Just a little bit.
But we had grins in our face that wouldn't quit, driving a GTO home from the dealership. And my wife followed us home in our second car, which is a 1940 Buick four-door sedan, which
quite a change in power there on that drive home. I can see why you were smiling.
There was no comparison. But that was enjoyable. We kept both those cars for a number of years, and we sold the Buick finally. But the GTO never left us. We drove that car all over until we finally got a second car, and then from there on in, we just kept it in the garage and drove it to drag strip and shows and whatever. So after a number of years, it really was a real second car. We was going to church on Sunday, and we were all dressed up ready to go to church, and I pulled up to a stop sign or a stop light, and the guy next to me had some kind of a Chevy. Was it? Oh, it was another GTO.
GTO on GTO. All
Yeah,
right.
so we're side by side at the light, and my wife is sitting next to me, and she says, "Don't you dare!" Well,
You dared.
I
You
dared.
dared.
Anyway, we took off, and I think the church was close enough. I think I got into second gear, and at the end of second gear, I figured I better be stopping this thing because I got a turn here. So I came into church kind of in a four-wheel drift, and everybody that kind of was standing outside was, yeah, Krantz is here. So
Hopefully this wasn't on a Sunday morning when
it
Mass
was
was in
on
service.
it was on a Sunday morning. Everybody was, yeah. I made the bulletin that week.
I bet you did.
But that was one of the things that happened that, you can't ever turn down a challenge. At least at that time, I was bulletproof. You couldn't turn down a challenge then. So nowadays it's like, you guys just go do what you want to do. I don't play that game anymore.
Now, was that event that Sunday morning something that solidified your love for the GTO?
Oh, it was long before that. Even Lois we had to have that car. I mean, we picked out the color, and she liked the car as much as I did. I think the kids have told me stories later on that she wasn't afraid to take on some teenagers either, as a matter of fact. So it wasn't all hunky dory, just me doing that kind of driving. She kind of joined in that same crowd too, but not as much as we did naturally. But yeah, and when we worked in the car over the years, there was always a big pair of shoes, a little pair of shoes working on the car underneath it. And then over the years, those 2 feet just changed places because he got a lot bigger, and so he kind of took my place. But same 2 pair of shoes, just different people wearing them. But that was it was very, and again, we never really sat down and said, okay, we're going to get rid of the car. We never did. We always the closest was with that '68, but we kept, it was just part of the family, really, in a way.
It happened naturally.
Yeah.
A lot of times when we go and buy new cars now, we don't think this is going to be my car for life. I just bought a car a couple weeks ago. I'm not thinking I'm going to have this car and I'm going to be interviewed about it in 60 years. So it's refreshing to hear it just naturally became a member of your family.
You see, back in those days, cars were, well, a lot of people threw their cars away. I mean, a lot of 65s, 6s, 7s all got scrapped over because either wrapped around trees or whatever. And if the bunch that we hung around with, we kind of hung on to our cars. We didn't get rid of them, and we liked what we had. It's just, it was just, like I said, it was so long, it just become part of the family. So, yeah, and later on, I got smart because I didn't get any tickets going down the drag strip. So that was kind of what Dave and I did for years. He was always with me on every Sunday or Saturday night. We'd take off and go to the drag strip, and we had a lot of fun. We went from super just stock class to actually ran brackets for a lot of years. And yeah, there was a car that we had. There was a number of cars. One was that Road Runner, and the other one was a guy. He had Chicken Little or something written on his deck. He ran pretty good for his dumb name that he had on it. It ran pretty good.
A little Mopar competition.
Yeah,
there.
we had a lot of fun with those two guys over the years. But eventually, I got tired of doing that, and I violated the rules, and I put a Chevy engine in it for a number of years. And then that's when I was down in the 12s at that point, 12-second trap time. And the worst thing that ever happened at the drag strip, and this is another story that went down in history, is going into third gear, going down the strip. I broke the drive shaft in half, and we had to have the loop. That was part of the rules. Well, the half that was in front of the loop, it fell on the ground and laid there. And the other half went by the loop and jumped down. And I pole vaulted over that loop or over that drive shaft. And the guys that were witnessing this thing said all 4 tires were off the ground.
I believe it.
And that was a ride. And fortunately, it came down straight. It didn't come down sideways or whatever. And I kept control, and we finally stopped it. But that happened at just over 100 miles an hour, which is kind of a thrill all by itself.
Yeah.
Well, then I didn't have a spare drive shaft, fairly obviously. You don't take that to the strip.
You didn't decide to just put that in your pocket, on your way?
So I said, okay, I had a pickup truck at home, and we got hold of a friend of mine went my home, and then Lois was there, and she drove the pickup truck back up to Saginaw, which was about 35 miles, and with a chain. And we towed the car home from the drag strip through Saginaw, Michigan, because that was the best way to go as far as traffic and whatever, and then down the highways, and we finally got it home. But while we're going through Saginaw, I'm at I think it was a 20-foot chain or a 15-foot chain between the two cars. She would accelerate, then I would do the stopping. That's how you make it all happen. Well, we're going through town, and this flaming idiot wanted to get between her and I to make a right-hand turn. And I'm blowing the horn like crazy, and he thought I was, giving him a finger and all the other good stuff. And I was trying to tell him, don't pull in there.
There's a chain.
This is not going to work.
This is not going to turn out well.
Well, finally, after about 2 or 3 seconds, he figured out that, hey, there's something wrong here. And he pulled off, and his face was very, very red by the time he got done. But we almost had a really good accident right in the middle of downtown Saginaw. So that was quite an eventful day. And Lois, at that point in time, that was it. She's not going to tow me home anymore, and all the other stuff that went with it. But that was kind of a long, hard day all the way around. But that was the only time that we really had a problem as far as with a car. And when I put the engine in it, the Chevy, I made towing hubs for the back of it, so that if something happened to the rear end or whatever, you put towing hubs on it, then they would just freewheel just like front wheels. So that's how I towed that thing basically over Michigan, was towing hubs in the back and just regular wheels in the front, and it worked out very well for us, really. And David, we got the sharp turns. He'd jump in the car and make sure the car would turn and follow us through. But those were the good old days. I never spent money that we needed for the family. Anything that we did, we needed for the family. We had the money for it, but anything that was left over kind of went in the car. But everybody had shoes and clothes, food, and then that was kind of my golfing or whatever. We had a lot of fun many years ago.
Harold, tell me what it was like cruising Woodward Avenue.
Woodward Avenue, that was a training ground for a lot of people, and I say that because engineers would come out at night when the kids were out, and they would always show up in a white 4-door sedan, and there'd always be 2 of them, and they would get in with the kids and they would race the kids. And we never knew what they had under the hood of those cars because they never would stop. But that's where they were trying out whatever the new trick of the week was, and see how it ran up against the kids. And if it ran fine, then it was good. If it didn't run fine, well, then they tried something else. So almost all the time, there was somebody had a Pontiac, Chevrolet, Ford, Oldsmobile. They all had cars out there with engineers in them racing the kids.
So Harold, if you could tell our viewers here, what did the racing look like on Woodward Avenue?
Oh, it was very interesting. In the early part of the days, they brought our cars that was just being driven on the street, but eventually it evolved into, they never went to AA fuel, but they came close. And that's when they finally shut that place down. But in the early days, at 10th and 10 Mile in Woodward, they had a signal light there, and you could go north. And at the end of a quarter mile, they had a yellow line painted across the city. They painted a line across the street. And about another 1/8 of a mile or so beyond that, there was a double yellow line. And you could go as fast as you wanted to up until that double line, and then you better be doing the speed limit at that double line, because the cops were sitting there. You could race all night long as you stayed within those yellow lines.
Stay between the lines, as my parents used to say.
Yes, and a lot of people didn't know that, but they had it pretty tight, and it was fairly safe. I mean, there was naturally some things that happened, but Normally speaking, they finally at the end they lost control, and they started bringing cars in on trailers, and that was basically the end of it. But there was a lot of racing that went on, and the police kind of looked the other way unless you went over that double line down there. But there was one story that there was a kid that had a '55 Chevrolet. It was a clapped out looking thing. It wasn't a very good looking car, but he parked it on the side of Woodward Avenue. And on the dash, he had $100 bill taped on the dash, edge to edge, and it was folded out like that. And you could, for $5, I think it was $5, you got to sit in the front seat of that car. And if you could lean forward in first gear and grab that thing with your teeth, you had the $100 bill.
Did you try that? Did you try
No,
it?
I didn't.
No.
But I know guys that did. As far as I know, that $100 bill is still tied to that front of the car yet. Because you could not lean forward in that car. I don't know what he had in it, but all I know is it went fast. It was for first gear. Like I said, he had that $100 bill there, and he kept it there for years. And then I guess he finally quit. But that was one of the strange things that you have on Woodward Avenue. You never knew what it was or what you're going to run into. But I didn't race too much on Woodward as far as me personally. We raced every place else, but not on Woodward. Telegraph was the big one that we raced on Telegraph quite a bit, which is over from Woodward. We ran into Wangers and those guys through Jim Stewart. Jim Stewart worked at Kroger Bakery, I worked at Kroger Bakery, and I got to know Stewart there. And then we would go to, that's how I got to know Wangers. Jim Stewart was the ignition and cam guy for the engine building for the Royal Pontiac. And he traveled with them. And then Jim, one Saturday, I got into trouble with my mother and dad, but one Saturday he asked me, he said, you want to come over this Saturday? I said, sure, I'll go with you guys. They're going to go to a strip, it was on east of Detroit, only north is up over north and west of Detroit. At some little small drag strip, and they had it rented for the day because Wangers or Ram Chargers were beating them going from second gear into third gear. The Wangers, or those guys would pull ahead of Wangers every time at that point in time. So what we were doing is we were going to try and time that car or get that thing to run quicker through the quarter mile. And on the way out there, we stopped at some Oldsmobile dealership, and they had bought a brand new set of what we call now slicks, because that was all the other times we're running soft recaps. You would take the recap out and it wasn't really done yet, and it comes out real soft rubber. So that's how they're getting all their grip, was using those half-baked recap tires. Well, these guys brought a set of slicks, and the guys that made them were in Arkansas someplace, and we borrowed them from that dealership. We wanted to try them and see if they worked, and we put them on the car, and we ran the whole day. And the story, well, there was a story. The guy that opened the strip up had a hot date or something because he didn't want to stay. Well, he had to run the timing trial that we couldn't run without him. Well, he left. So the only thing we had was a stopwatch. And Wanger said, who knows how to run a stopwatch? I said, I do. Okay, he said, now you get in the back seat of the car and look over my shoulder. And he said, when I hit like 4,000 RPMs in third gear or second gear, and I shift into third gear and I go up to 5,000 there, time that distance of time. So I got into the race car, got in the back seat, got on my hands and knees, and I'm looking over Wanger's shoulder. And Wanger's took off like a bat. And I'm hitting the stopwatch, and I'm watching for the tat go back up. And I hit the stopwatch again. And then Wanger's gives me this signal. It's like, oh boy.
Uh-oh.
So I duck down in the seat, and I'm looking up, and next thing I know, there's corn stalks going by the window. Like we're doing about 100 miles an hour. And we fell off the end of this concrete. It dropped about that far. And we landed down there, and there's all these corn stalks going by. I said, what in the world is going on? Well, this drag strip had a stopping area about as long as this room at the end of the strip. And then from there on in, there was a one-lane path, and you wound up in a cornfield. And at the end of this path, there was a big turnaround thing, and you went in and turned around and came back. There was no shut down strip or nothing. You just drove out there and away you went. Well, I didn't know that. And Wangers didn't tell me that. I may not even got, but anyway, we finally, and after that, I was used to it. It was okay. I just sat there and I did the timing, but we must have made about 8 or 9, 10 trips down the strip trying to get this car to run better in that distance. And it was later on, many years later, that the story came out that Ram charges were running, the rumor was they're running nitrous, and that's how they were making that big change or big jump. And that's why nobody could get them. And I don't know if you want to put that on tape or not.
What kinds of changes was he making in between runs?
Not cam timing, but ignition timing, carburation changes, and well, that was basically about it. It was cam timing, and it was all the stuff that we could do on the outside of the engine without turning it down. We didn't change cams or anything, because that would have been too much of a job out there. And they could have, but it was strictly tune-up stuff that we're trying to get that car to run better. And I don't think we made any big advances. We tried to keep those slicks over the weekend, but the dealership that we got them from said no, we're going to use them on our car, and we couldn't take it because they did make a difference. Those slicks were a lot different as far as traction was concerned. But and that was the start of running the 2 tread marks round tire. That was when it all started.
Any other interactions with Wagner's that are worth sharing here with us?
Yeah, this one, I was not involved in this one, but this story came from Jim Stewart, who was in the car when this went on. But Wangers, and there was 4 of them. Wangers, Stewart, it wasn't Rediger, but there's two other guys that were in the car, 4 of them. They were out on, I think it was Middle Belt Road out in West Detroit. And about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and some guy pulled up next to him. Wangers is driving the Hot Chief #1, which is the #1 car that Ace Wilson had. It was all painted up, numbers, the whole 9 yards. And it was a race car. And they're out driving this thing on the street, which was totally illegal to begin with. And these guys challenged Wangers to a race, and needless to say, they accepted the challenge. Well, they're racing like crazy going down Middle Belt in this race car. And here come the police. Made a U-turn and started chasing them. Well, Wangers just shut the car down, pulled off the side of the road, and by the time the police caught up with them, they were all outside the car standing there.
Waiting.
And when the police walked up, they said, well, who was driving this? Nothing. Well, where were you sitting? I was sitting in the back seat. Well, where were you sitting? I was in the back seat. Where were you sitting? I was in the back seat. I was in the back seat.
It's a big back seat.
Everybody was in the back seat. Well, the cop got tired of this, so he arrested everybody. And they were going to impound the car. Well, that car was a race car. It had no VIN number. It had no serial number. It wasn't licensed any place. It was a piece of Pontiac property. So it was history if the police impounded it, because nobody could claim it. Pontiac, if they did claim it, would be the end of anybody getting cars from them. So the police called Ace Wilson at 3 o'clock in the morning, told Ace Wilson, I got 4 of your renegade guys out here running this car. What do you want me to do with them? Ace Wilson went berserk. And he got out there and he got his 4 guys out of jail, and they took the car home. They towed it home from there. And the next day, when they went in to see Ace Wilson, he said, that's it. He said, the program is done. I'm all done racing. You guys do whatever. Get your stuff out of my shop. I'm done. This is it. I'm not getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning with you clowns out there trying to get me in jail. And those guys, they were dumbfounded. They didn't know what to do. So the next day, I think Rediker went in to see Ace Wilson, and he said, "Come on, give us another chance. We found out we did something wrong here. We won't do it again." And he finally relented and let the program continue. But he was going to shut it down. That was it. All done with Ace Wilson with Royal Pontiac. So that was as close, I think, as it came to ever getting out of the racing business. But it made Ace Wilson a lot of money because they sold an awful lot of cars because of their reputation with racing.
So Harold, growing up in the Michigan in the muscle car booming era, is there any stories you have on any kind of supercars or secret cars that you can shed some light on for us?
Yes. Back in those days, things were a lot loose in the factory than they are now. You could order special stuff and magically would appear out the back door when you got there. But the one story that I know personally, I know the man personally. I raced with him, and not against him, but I raced with him. And his name was Van Seymour, and he had a car that was all set up for stock car racing. And he and Charlie Johnson had twin cars. They both bought their cars at the same time. Somehow, and I don't know how this happened, but Van Seymour was a die making engineering, and that's where he worked, was there in die making. And they had what they called test fenders, test steel. And what that was it was thinner stock, because if you ran the stock thickness of a fender on the original die before it got all tuned up and everything, it would stick together and not come apart because it was too thick and there was too many imperfections that would allow it to come apart. So they ran what they called tryout steel, which was thinner, and therefore the dies would come apart and they could see where their high spots were, and they gradually ground those down to where eventually they wound up with a stock thickness that they could run through the die. Well, once you got the die all set, they could run the tryout steel through there, and the rumor has it that they ran a number of fenders, hoods, doors through these dies with tryout steel, meaning it was thinner. And I think Seymour, being that he was in his die engineering bit, even though he worked for Chevrolet, because if they had a die problem or a die program that they overwhelmed Pontiac, they would ship those dies, even though they're a Pontiac die, to Chevrolet or whatever to get the work done, because they all had to get their jobs done. So if they were filled up here, they would use some facility someplace else. Well, anyway, Seymour, the rumor has it that he wound up with one of these cars with thin metal. And I was around that car. I was with Seymour. I rode with him. We traveled together a little bit and drag race and all this other stuff. And we worked on his car. His car would come in the garage, and it was kind of strange because he would not ever allow anybody to put their elbows on his fender.
Too thin?
Because you just didn't do that. That was and one time it was kind of funny. This is what really sold me on the deal. There was something weird about this car, because when I was getting ready to run my car with 9-inch slicks, when I put the rims and the slick together, it was really tight going up in the rear wheel well. So I was telling Charlie and Van that, and I said, I'm having a real problem getting clearance for my tire back there. And Seymour says, well, all you got to do is take a bumper jack and put it against the inside fender well and just pump it out, and then it'll give you enough a bulge to get the slick up in the fender. Well, I went out there and I got my bumper on my bottle jack and I stuck it in there. I could have busted that jack in half and it wasn't going to move. That fender well and whatever was solid.
Wow.
But he moved his out, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, well, how did he do that if I tried mine and it didn't work? And his has got the bulge in it already. How did he get his to work that way? Because he didn't have the metal, a lot of the inner parts that weren't in that car. So as far as I'm concerned, there was something weird and different about that car that we could never. He never admitted it, but there was something different there, and that's all. And the car is still in existence. And why somebody doesn't take a set of mics or whatever and tap his son on the shoulder and said, "Just let me go check the car," because it's still there. It's all in one piece. It sits in the garage. It doesn't do anything. He's never had it restored. It's got the original paint on it, and there's no reason that somebody just can go in and verify the story one way or the other. And there's one magazine, but two different times, they ran a story on that. And the guys that actually went to his garage and they were going to check that car out did not bring micrometers with them. So they could not check the thickness of the metal. If that was your whole objective to begin with, how in the world would you go to an interview with somebody without the proper tools to check what you're going to do in the first place? That was idiotic.
It's a great question.
I don't understand why they were so, or if they did and they found out it was, then they didn't want to report it. I don't know. But it's really strange that this car is out there. And another thing, Charlie Johnson had an identical car to Van. Same engine, same everything. Twin cars. Charlie Johnson was always 0.2 of a second slower than Van. And we always accused Charlie of granny shifting it. Charlie didn't granny shift that car at all. And the reason was that I think he was running 200-300 pounds lighter than Charlie. And when they went to weigh the car, Seymour always put a big heavy logging chain in the trunk, and he always let his son steer the car onto the scales. So he had an extra 150 or some pounds that they threw into the weight. And he never caught him at it or whatever, and he always made the weight. But I honestly believe that's a lightweight car. And until someone can show me a set of mics that proves otherwise, I believe it. Because I've seen where Van was very, very cautious while you're coming anywhere near his car and leaning on the fenders or whatever.
You also thought that they were going to take the car away from
Well, that was another thing. That when Seymour bought the car, and I say bought, they gave him the 64. And at the end of the season, he was running right on the national record, and Pontiac took the car away from him because he was getting too darn close to their factory guys. Well, then in 65, Seymour says, "You're not going to pull that stunt on me again." He actually had bought the car with a VIN number, and then they couldn't take that car away from him. And that's why he still has it today.
Where is it? Let's go check it out. We'll bring some
It's
tools.
in,
Chef.
no, it's not in Davis. It used to be, but his son moved someplace near there, and I don't know what city it is. It's one of the small towns around there. And the car is just sitting in his son runs a auto shop, and it's sitting in the back of that auto shop just the way it was when he raced it. And it's still there. I mean, it's nothing, it's never been changed, or it's still as grubby looking after those years as it always has been. Although he took very good care of it, but over the years, you get a scratch here and a dent there. And that's the way it is. But if I had the time and I wanted to go, I'd go check that car myself. Now, whether he'll let you do it or not, I don't know.
Harold, was there ever a chance or a time throughout the decades you thought you might sell your car?
Yes, one time. And that was the fall of 1968. I went to Superior Pontiac Cadillac, and in the back lot, there sat a black, shiny, red, or shiny, all black interior, the whole bit, GTO. And I took one look at that car, and it was a bad-looking piece of machinery. And I went home and I told Lois, I said, I think I'm gonna trade this the 65 in for the 68. And she said, I don't think we want to do that. So I waited long enough that they finally sold it, and I didn't buy it. But I came close to buying a 68 two-door GTO.
That was the only time. So
That was the only time
Wow.
I ever thought about selling that car. You're right. I bought a house, and I had a garage in that house. And then I bought another lot, and I built a garage on that lot, and that was my man cave. Well, the GTO was here, and I wanted it down there, and it was downhill, sort of, kind of, on the road. And I didn't have a drive shaft in the GTO because that's the way we towed it down there. We flat towed on a two-wheel dolly going down there. So I didn't put the drive shaft back in it, and I just figured, well, I'd pull it up the driveway and I'll hook a chain to it, and Lois will drive the car, and I'll just steer it into the garage down there. Well, that was a good plan, except when I pulled the car out of the garage and got it aiming down the street, I put these plastic rubber stops, the triangular
Shocks.
chalk. Thank you.
You got it.
And that stupid GTO ran over that chalk like it wasn't even there. And it took off, and here I am running. I was hanging on the steering wheel with one hand and trying to get the door open with the other hand and failing miserably at both. And I was running down the street. I found out I can do 25 miles an hour. I can't do 26. And I fell off. I mean, I fell and I landed. And this was one of those chopped roads that's got the chip and seal.
Mm-hmm.
And I skittered and I humped and I bumped and whatever. I finally come to a stop. And the car kept on going. And it hit a tree on the side of the road. And it finally stopped.
Oof.
And I bent the hood and front bumper. Didn't even get the grill. Got the hood and the bumper. And I'm laying on the road, and finally I said, this isn't going to be good. And it wasn't.
What year was that?
It was probably in
Late 90s?
late 90s. I
Okay.
retired.
That's when you decided to restore it.
There's 92. Well, no, I waited a few years after that. It was 92 and about 93, because we moved down there in 92. Well, within a year or so, we had that. Anyway, I got picked up, and I started going up the street. Well, I had red shorts on and a red T-shirt. And Lois looked at me, and I'm coming up the street, and it didn't look too bad. But then I started looking at me, and she started looking at me, and it's like, you got some problems. When we got all done, first of all, I had gravel embedded all over me because I fell in the street, and I was bleeding and whatever. And the second dumbest thing I did was getting into a shower, and that water hit me, and it's like, I have never had a pain like that in my life. So I jumped out. I jumped out of the shower because it hurt. And I said, that's not going to work. So we finally got water in a tub, and I finally slowly got it. And she was picking gravel off me and whatever. When we got all done, I had, I think it was 10 or 12 7x14 gauze bandages taped to me all over. And I hurt. There was no place I could lay in bed that didn't hurt. And that was that way for about a week or two. But boy, and the sad part of it is the car was hitting the tree down the street about a block. So I told Lois to call somebody that got a wrecker and go pick the car and see if we can't get it in the garage. And she said, well, and she made a phone call, and about an hour later she came back. She said, well, we got the car in the garage. She said, some one-armed guy in a wrecker hooked it up and put it in all by himself. A one-armed guy. Oh, man. You feel like an idiot.
What's your fondest memory of the car?
Buying it.
Buying it. Okay. The very beginning.
That's my first memory.
I would say, yeah, that was. There's so many of them. Over 61 years we've had that car. 61. Well, 65 to 26. That's got to be 61. So we've owned the car 61 years. There's a lot of memories that's in that car. I mean, a bunch. I don't know if I could sit there and tell you, this one's any better than the other one, but we've had an awful lot of fun with that car. And it became a second car, which is why I think there's so few miles on it. It became the second car almost right away. So we had the other car, and then we just set that one in the garage.
What was the main car?
It was a '68 Catalina. I liked that. It was that green army color is what my dad called it. But I liked it. It was a nice looking two-door hardtop, and we enjoyed that car. But Lois was going to bowling one day, and she and Linda were in the car, and she stopped to make the left-hand turn to go into the bowling alley. And some off-duty policeman decided, I guess, he wanted to roll over that car, and he hit her in the rear end. Really, I mean, bad. It hit it so hard that it split the frame rails apart,
Wow.
and the transmission fell down on the ground.
That's hard to do on that solid piece of metal.
Yeah, it was. She took a lick. Linda wound up someplace in the back seat.
No sequence.
In the well, yeah, and Lois, her seat was tipped almost back to the other back seat. So I mean, she took a big wallop, and so that was the end of that 68. And the insurance company, we bought a 69 Cat, 70 Cat. You're right, it was a 70 Cat.
Just down to 5 GTOs from 25, 30.
David's got 2 of them, and I've got 3. I got 2 65s. One of them, the red one, is together and running, and the blue one is about half together. And the 67 air car is in primer, sort of, kind of. And David's got to work on the 66 convertible,
Do you have a favorite?
the red one. That by far, I mean, we've had other ones, but that was by far the most favorite. And we had the most fun with it, quite frankly. We drove it basically all over the United States.
How many miles are on it?
84,000.
4,000.
Some of those were a quarter mile at a time.
Most of them?
A lot of them. We restarted in 2000, well, 99, 2000, 2001 it was restored. For complete frame off the whole 9 yards. And
Switch back to a Pontiac engine from
oh
a
yeah,
Chevy engine?
no, the Chevy was long gone. That was not going to stay there. Sold that to some kid that wanted it real bad.
Harold, and say 50 years from now, what do you hope the biggest takeaway, or what are people going to remember the most about your car?
Well, right now, there's David and his son Michael and his son Chase. So there's 3 generations of people that are going to wind up with that car.
Got it pretty well planned out.
So I don't know what Chase is going to say about it.
He's 5.
But he's 5 years old, and so we'll have to ask him in maybe another 5 or 10 years.
It's never too early.
But that's the plan, is that it just goes right down to the family. And I hope it works out that way. You know, the kids nowadays, a lot of them don't care about stuff that's old or is in the family. They just don't care about the old dishes, the old furniture, whatever. They want their other stuff. And I guess there's nothing wrong with that. But in this car right here, as far as I'm concerned, I'm going to give it to somebody in good shape, and what they do with it, what Dave does it with, that's his business. Once it comes to him, then he does. And there's no rules or regulations with it. And I'm assuming that it's going to be the same with you, Mike and Chase. So, you know, you don't know. I won't be here I'm 87 years old, right? I'll be 88 in another little while.
Happy early birthday.
So, you know, I don't have that many years left on this earth, but it'll be fun to watch from wherever we are.
This car is in his trust.
It sounds like it. Yes, she was saying
Yeah,
this
you're
car's
right.
in your trust. Yeah. Sounds like you've got quite a legacy lined up for it.
Well, you know, and that's not by accident, but I'm glad it is that way, though.
Me too. Yeah.
I mean, you know, rather than having no plan whatsoever, having at least some kind of a plan, whether it all falls through or follows through or not, I don't know. That won't be in my control, but at least there's something there if someone wants to keep that car. It's won 2 national. I probably shouldn't say this here, but it's won 2 gold awards at the 2 Pokey conventions. So the car it's in good shape. I mean, it's no Mickey Mouse outfit. It's been fairly well taken
Been
care
well
of.
loved for 61 years.
Yeah, see, and it's not, there's nothing to be ashamed of, by no means. I wish I could have brought it here, but there's just no way you can get that car, you know, 1,000 miles or whatever it is to get it from here. If you guys ever have a convention closer to where we are, I'll bring the car there and nothing flat.
I'd love to see it. Yeah.
I'm getting old to a point that I'd love to get, I would just love to get in a car and drive that 4-speed. To me, that's just, there's nothing like rolling a 4-speed. I don't care what anybody says. They can take all these automatics and do whatever they want to with them. I'll take the old 4-speed and go with it.
You're in good company.
I mean, you grew up with that stuff, I'm sure I can't shift as fast as I used to, but
So Harold, if Hollywood were to come by and say, hey, we're going to make a movie about you and your car, who would you trust to portray you? What actor would you pick?
Probably Bruce Willis.
Why is that?
He's a man. No, I mean, a man. He's not.
He's a man's man?
Yes. You shake his hand, you got your hand shook.
All right.
That's the way it should be. And I admire the films that he made, and he always played, the guy that stood up tall. And I wouldn't feel bad. In fact, it'd be an honor, quite frankly, to have someone like that. He didn't take a lot of guff from a lot of people, which even in film he didn't do it. So
I'm thinking I'm getting to know you a little bit, that you're the guy that stood up tall and didn't take much guff from people.
I tried not to. It's
Good
kind
for
of in my life. I started out as an apprentice machine repairman in a factory, and then we went through the process of supervision and then general supervision. And when you're steering a 300-pound millwright in the face, or a 400-pound millwright in his face, and he's about this much taller than you are, and you got to give him a job to do that he doesn't want to do, you cannot back down, because if you back down, then they called you a round heel, which means that your heels are rounded and you tip over real easy.
You can't stand up for yourself.
So if you don't, you're going to be in trouble. So that's how I was born and raised. You look the guy right in the eye if you could, and you made him do what he had to do. And that's just the way, because if you didn't, then the results would be ridiculous. So yes, that's the way that you had to be. And it's kind of fun after a while, because once they found out that you didn't tip over, then your job became a lot easier, because they would listen to what you had to say, but then you also had to make sure that when they had their good ideas, you listened to what they said.
Of course.
And that was probably as important as the other way around. And once they found that out, then your job became a lot easier. And I found that out, many times over, that if they respected you, that went a long way of getting the job done. And I wasn't their playmate. I didn't go drinking with them. I didn't run around with them. Doesn't mean that we didn't have a beer together once in a while, but you had to have that separation, because if you're their friend, then if they do something wrong, then you're compromised already, and you can't have that. If you're going to be a supervisor, be a supervisor.
Maintain your point of authority.
And go from there.
Well, Harold, I greatly thank you for sharing your stories with us about your original owner of a 1965 GTO. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the convention here in Loveland, Colorado.
Well, thank you very much for having me. This is an honor and a pleasure, quite frankly. I was a little bit surprised that I thank my daughter for that, because she lassoed you people. Mm-hmm. And we had some conversations too, but over the internet. But
yeah.
This was great. Yeah.
It's a pleasure to meet you both, and David as well.
Oh yeah, there's the little guy over there.
Garage door shuts, engines rest. Next episode, man, it'll be the best.